Chronometry calibrated. The gateway will open in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Analyzing data. Likelihood of parallel universes now at 12%. Continuing analysis of the many worlds hypothesis.
Remember this. Podcasting is a pure idea. It occurs spontaneously and without instruction. Random acts of listening are occurring constantly throughout the galaxy. There are whole armies, battalions, that have no idea that they've already subscribed to the channel. Welcome, everyone. I'm Gayfesh. Joining me, as always, is the lovely DemonMama.
Hello, good morning.
And Moss.
Hi.
And today we are talking about the season finale, the last 2 episodes of Andor Season 1, which answers the question, what if Marsha P. Johnson was the brick?
Oh my God. That's crazy.
Oh, man. Did I not? I just got to say, Moss, did I not tell you this series was going to end on a fantastic, incredible note?
I already loved Marva so much. And like for the finale to be so kind of centered around her, I really, really loved that. Like obviously as disability representation, as like a tragic character in a way. Like I guess, maybe going into the literary definitions, maybe she isn't exactly tragic, but I don't know. It was so good. I loved it. It was great.
So there is one thing, and I think we talked about it in the last season on the MCU. I think we had referenced it, but there was a change to Marva's speech issued on high by the higher ups who, don't want any naughty words in their Star War. But as scripted, she didn't say fight the Empire. She said fuck the Empire. They were gonna drop the first F-bomb in Star Wars. And honestly, I think they still could. I mean, this show did drop the first S-bomb. It was the first time shit was ever said in Star Wars. So, there's precedent.
I know, I did not like Guardians 3. I just was telling Gayfesh about that.
That can't be. Wait, that can't be because of Glep Shitto.
Oh, Glep Shitto.
That's true.
Listen, if Marvel can do an F-bomb and it's like the highlight of that movie, Guardians 3, it's like, open the fucking door. That was hilarious. You can do it in your Star Wars. I promise you. You can do it and it'll be funny.
Well, listen, there's still time. We've got another season coming out.
That's true.
So it's funny you mentioned that because recently Tony Gilroy talked about that. And he said that they kind of went back and forth with Disney for a while and ultimately decided like, all right, we'll let up on this. And part of the reason is because like after reflection, he decided that like, even though it doesn't sound quite as good, the message of fight the Empire is actually better than fuck the Empire, given the rest of the themes of the show. And I was reading that the other day and I was like, oh, okay, you know what? I know that this is ultimately corporate censorship, but at least they were able to find a silver lining.
Yeah, like a good explanation for it. It's like that adorable little lady from Oregon who she was like, I have trouble cursing in public, but we have to fuck Trump. And it was like, okay, I don't think that's really...
She obviously has problems swearing. That was not a good one.
No, like of the things you could have said, that was not okay. But anyway.
Of course, they also got in their Star Wars fuck, like in episode 11 when the 2 fishermen rescue Cassian and the other guy. He goes, "Scob the Empire, scob." That like you can tell what scob.
That curse word, yeah.
So that. Oh, by the way, that guy that Cassian had paired off with, he's actually in Rogue One. He's a minor character. He was just like one of the extras that joined up on the stolen ship for the mission. But yeah, I just like and I think last time I went and saw Rogue One, I didn't even pay attention to. So next time I watch Rogue One, I'm going
to be looking for him. Yeah.
And maybe he's in season 2. Well, maybe they'll do more with him.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a fan favorite, Melshi.
Yeah,
Rue Scott Melshi is his name. But yeah,
interesting. I didn't even have that.
Love him.
He was the guy like at the very beginning of the jail arc, right? Who was like, stop thinking about getting out. You're never getting out. And then Andy Serkis was like, hey, stop it. Shut up. That's the same dude. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
He's like, he's hardcore.
Okay. So, Moss, like what were your first major impressions of this arc?
This one I found a little bit less engaging. Like I definitely wasn't feeling like, oh, I'm just going to rewatch this over and over again like I was with the prison arc. It's very inspiring. There's like a couple things that I really liked about what they did. Like, listeners who've listened to previous episodes will know that the droid rights thing comes up for me. And like, so I loved how focused this arc was on like B's experience of dealing with Marva's death. And like, I love Brasso.
Mhm.
He's my favorite, I think.
He's so good.
He's the best. He's like, just his interactions with B and being like, do you need a moment? Like, and the sort of childlike desire that B has to stay in the house for one more night, and the indulgence of Brasso being like, okay, we'll stay here for one night, but then you got to get your shit together. The fact that he was so involved in the whole like Marva's not feeling well, and that conversation that he had with Bix in a previous episode, the fact that he is the one who burned her body and made her brick, and he carried her brick, like that relationship is so interesting to me. And I don't think it's just the relationship with Brasso though. I think that it kind of expands out if you look at the entirety of like Ferrick's community and how they respond to one another. I think 3 different people that Cass interacted with immediately said, I'm sorry about your mom. It was like, there's just an immediate kind of camaraderie. And like, Marva, obviously, I think she's from Ferrick's, and she made herself like a community leader there through the Daughters of Ferrick's. And so I wonder a little bit if that level of care would be present for if it was just somebody else's mom who died.
No, probably not. Like
right.
she's a prominent citizen. Like, I mean, and it's not like everyone on Ferrick's knows each other. Like, there's like, people moving in and out of different neighborhoods, and like certainly somebody like what was his name? Starts with a P that they killed for running the radio.
The radio.
He didn't merit such a big send off.
No.
Pac was his name.
Yeah.
Pac.
Okay. Yeah, Pac. I couldn't remember because like they're all glub shit up. And you're never. I don't think you're ever going to reach a level of social equity where everyone's death merits the same send off.
Sure.
But it's important to take advantage of it when it does,
I think also like there's a history there with her character and her like partner, husband Clem, like that he was executed right there in that town. We see a part of Ferrick's, like obviously Ferrick's is pretty big, but we're seeing like the story that we see is centered around like basically one neighborhood of Ferrick's. And I think there's like a lot of interconnection, and it seems like there's like a lot of care. And sure, while it's true that like, not every character is going to get as big of a celebration or whatever, they're taking care of it in other ways. Like we even see in the case you brought up Pac, like we even see that like his son is still able to run the shop and whatever. And also we know that like the people who worked for the shop are like still there. The guy, I forget his name, the guy with the beard and the dogs. Like
yeah, I was like, is that Bix's dad? Who is that?
Yeah, it's like he's like Andor's friend. He's like just his buddy who like works in the junkyard or whatever. Like that guy is like, he's still there. He's still supporting these other people. So we see that there's like a lot of community interconnectedness. There's a line, I think it's in the second to last episode. Oh, actually, no, I think it was actually from the last arc, which I think I brought it up last time. But it's Bix and Brasso are talking. It's like, oh, it's like, she's not your mother. Like, it's like, well, she's not yours either. Like, it doesn't really matter. Like, it's attention is brought to the fact that, like, the connections that form in a community like this are different than just, like, bloodlines and anything like that. It's like
she's the neighborhood mom. I get the feeling. Yeah. And, like, I know that, like, society has gotten a lot more insular and people don't know their neighbors as much. But I remember growing up knowing my neighbors a little bit more, and like you would know people who were just like, oh yeah, kids, come on over, just I'll keep an eye on you, like it's like somebody has to rush to work to drop your kids off there, and people like that, people who have that kind of maternal vibe to them.
Like the it has changed, but not to like spring off into some kind of like nostalgia, whatever, but I do remember multiple people filling those types of roles. You know what I mean? There was so much when I was, a kid, like it was so many different families that like interconnected with one another and would send each other's kids over for certain events. Like it was so common, and it isn't as common, it seems, like in neighborhoods. Like I'm sure there are all kinds of other connections that people have. I know, like obviously it's a necessity, but yeah, neighborhoods are like, they feel more distant than they used to, for sure. And it's interesting that like this show makes that such a center, and it clearly resonates with people, like that yearning for a community that is interconnected, that can help one another in ways that like people aren't getting, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like, there's so many interesting political things. Like I have notes, I like, there's stuff about like, and I do want to discuss it, like the cracking down of the empire and like how that backfires and everything. But like, I think that the community thing is like the thing that feels so unique in this kind of storytelling dynamic, where like, this is typically not what it is. Like, at the very beginning of this season, when we were talking about, I liked that there weren't stormtroopers and that kind of bullshit in the first couple episodes, because I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't really want to feel like we're doing Star Wars again. Like that's, it gets tired after a point. I will go watch the movies, but it gets tired.
Yeah.
But that just feels like the most aspirational thing about this is that we could live in a community where we just care for people like that. And like, we could live in neighborhoods where, like I know the neighbors' kids, and like, it's really weird as a trans person to try to talk about it, but like, I want kids to feel like they have trusted adults in their neighborhood, even though I am child free. Yeah. And I want to live in a neighborhood with children. Like I don't get annoyed when kids are like making noise and throwing snowballs and stuff. I might be like, hey, be careful near the cars. But like, I'm not going to be curmudgeonly, because I think children should be feeling comfortable enough to play and things. And like, that is something that we did get a little bit of that in Ferrix, I think, is toward the beginning, obviously, before all the shit starts to go down, really. Just like feeling safe in your neighborhood, feeling like you can go ask people for something, or like you can rely on your neighbor if your normal support care network is not present. Yeah. So anyway, don't want to like linger on that too long.
There's also something to be said for this. Like typically in a Star Wars, you've got your central protagonist who in the climax is going to face off against the big bad and have some big heroic moment. But Cassian is just one small part of this finale, and he frees Bix from the Imperial base, but like that's a very minor part of what's going on here. There is no singular hero that stands up. The closest you could get to that is Marva, but she's dead.
She's dead, yeah.
I mean,
It's
Brasso.
her words that inspires Brasso. Look,
He did not tolerate disrespect to that droid. That is what kicked off the riot.
Brasso bashed in an imp's brains with Marva, so that was awesome.
Yeah.
But like the point is, it's not any one person. It's the group.
Yeah.
It's the community.
Yeah.
Everybody at the same time.
You have to come together, because if you try and fight the Empire alone, you will perish. So the show shows these acts of courage by individuals, but they are all part of the group. They're all part of the collective. They're all the community coming together to fight the outsiders.
It's interesting too that like the show takes a lot of time to show that like not everyone has the exact same motivation for coming together, but they come together nonetheless. It like the final arc has a very clear like thesis statement in the form of Nemec's manifesto. This idea that like freedom, occurs spontaneously, that the heart of the empire squeezes, the more people like slip through, and the like that is very central to this. You see that like a great example is like what you were just talking about. We see Brasso, we see Marva. Marva is the character who is most motivated by like a explicit revolutionary line. Like she's like, I have had an awakening, I want to fight the empire. Then we have Brasso, who is there because he cares about Marva, and he cares about B, and he cares about Cassian. Then we have I don't remember his name, Pox Kid, who is there to get revenge. He throws a literal bomb to get revenge for his dad. We have the Daughters of Ferrix, who are there to honor somebody that they cared about, who had something to say and want to hear her words. We have all of these different people who are all of their diverse interests all sort of coalesce in this need to fight the empire, because the empire cannot tolerate or accept their way of life. It cannot accept the difference. They must be brought into line with the Empire's intents, whether they want to or not. Which, of course, the episode or the show ends with what is the Empire's command? What are they aiming towards? And the answer, of course, is that last post-credit scene of them slotting in the piece from Narkina 5 into the dish of the Death Star, which is just like in another show, that kind of a thing could have just been like, oh my God, remember the Death Star? But
it's framed that way in terms of like the camera movement and everything. Like that
absolutely.
is the most Star Warsy. I would say the two most Star Warsy parts are that and Luthen taking on the Imperial ship and getting away.
That was so cool.
It was very
Luthen's
it was
a
the most
badass.
Star Wars, but that was a fun
Okay.
moment. But yeah, like sorry, to get back to your thing, those were just my thoughts on the most Star Warsy part of this.
It is like, it's very like it serves a great purpose in this show, being that it's like, look, this is what it's for. This is what all of this pain and all of this interruption of your life and invasiveness and interrogation and control and dominance, that's what they want. They want a bigger weapon to dominate more. That's where it goes. And so the show is very graceful in the way that it ties all of these different interests together in being like, we have to come together to fight this, because what this entity wants, what this Imperial entity wants, is to make everyone into a machine of further killing and domination. That is it. It is a machine of control and terror. And I love that it does that. It's incredible. And also to one of the things that you said, Gayfesh, was you mentioned how like Andor is not the main character and nor is anyone, but also importantly, Luthen is not the main character here. He's not even a part, barely. He just observes. He comes here to watch, basically. There's this moment where you kind of see his there's a couple of shots where you see his expression of being like, oh my God, like something is happening that I didn't plan. And especially, this is especially poignant after his speech of being like, oh, like I made my mind a sunless space so that we have any hope of like, overcoming this. And it's like, oh, like he's not alone. It's not just people like him that can make these changes happen.
Well, it's interesting that like 3 of Luthen's crew are on Ferrix. It's him, it's Vel, and it's Cinta, and the only one of them that does anything in this is Cinta, who kills the Imperial officer. But they're just not there. They didn't incite this riot. They were there to try and kill Cassian to cover their own tracks. This has nothing to do with them. So it's like Nemec said.
Well, I think he kind of realizes that it does at the end. Yeah. It's like Luthen has this realization that, oh, it does have to do with me, but not in the way that I thought. This is not my plot. This is not my plan, but it has the same end.
Nemec's speech is like, his manifesto, like that is the summation, the random acts of rebellion occurring spontaneously. And like, I'm not the first one to point this out, but like the last sentence is, remember this, try, which is the Virgin Yoda versus the Chad Nemec. The Yoda's famous do or do not, there is no try. This is a direct like that that is not accidental. That is deliberately a response to Yoda. And
that's very cool.
Honestly, I was talking about like on Blue Sky, I was posting about how ways that the original trilogy could have been better, because like obviously Lucas had a political intent with the prequel trilogy. What he didn't have was the writing skill to actually pull it off. And one of the biggest flaws, I think, is that he didn't do enough to show the Jedi as like establishment libs who think that nothing could ever go wrong. Like I don't want Yoda's failure to be only encapsulated as he wasn't able to defeat Palpatine in a fight. I want that failure to be ideological and to be textually shown, not just inferred from, like us decades later talking about it.
Like that he also paved the way for this to happen, because that's what neoliberalism is.
Yes.
Well, you definitely see that in like the prequels. And I think obviously like in the original trilogy, none of this stuff had been written yet. Like, this was not like an architectural 3-part thing. These were being written on the fly in conversation with one another. And I think the like original trilogy, it is limited in its like conversation about these topics. It was, but also like in rewatching the prequels and all of their flaws and all of the things that I have issues with, the one thing that stands out with the prequels is that there is this very explicit political through line, and some of it is cringe, but it's also like, I always think of this spot in the final movie in Revenge of the Sith. There's this fight between Yoda and Emperor Palpatine in the Senate chambers, and they're literally picking up the little floaty things that we see them in the Senate chamber. They're like the little chambers that represent each country. Yeah, the pods, and they're like picking them up and throwing them at each other, and like. And it's this, they're literally fighting with the democracy's physical representation of each system in the star system, just chucking it at each other and throwing them aside. And like, yes, Yoda is not like the aggressor, but he's nonetheless like visually destroying these planets and utilizing them in his combat against like darkness or whatever, or his perception of darkness. And like, that is so thematic for the prequels. And how it ties through. It is a bummer that like the original trilogy and the prequels like don't plug in as well as they could have, but it's like you can see where it was like, okay, this was thinking about something very different, like the original trilogy being like, we're representing like a heroic rise against an imperial war machine. But something that's very notable between comparing the original trilogy to like Andor is that we don't really see much of the like intimacy of the effects of the Empire in the original trilogy. Like the most that you see is like the Ewoks, but well, there's a whole other conversation we could have about that. But so it's like there's that piece missing, and I feel like Andor really maybe too far into the future, but like kind of fills in that picture and goes, okay, yeah, that there's the stormtroopers and the TIE fighters and the big scary Star Destroyers, but what does it look like? What does it look like on the ground for these people, for these communities?
I think one of my favorite, I guess I want to like highlight Nemec's, like a different part of Nemec's speech, because he says that the need for control is so unnatural, and like that is where the Empire's like failure point is. And like, and you see it's kind of contrasted almost immediately with like the actual behavior of the Empire as they're like getting freaked out about the size of this crowd. And, also just like they created the conditions where they would need to police. Like they constructed crime. We watched it happen. They were like, you can only have 40 people. And then way more people showed up, obviously. And it's just them it's like when they put a curfew down and they're like, we're going to beat you up if you're still outside. And it's like, okay, you just created the crime out of nothing, like just okay, whatever. But like their need for control and their desperation for it and the fear because they know that they're not well equipped enough to handle that situation. And I like that's part of the intimacy that we were missing in the original. Like obviously it's like a simpler time kind of like politically when the original ones were coming out. I feel like, the groundwork was being laid then for what we are dealing with now, but in a way that was probably hard to predict in the abstract back then. So it like makes sense that the original ones are a little bit less complicated and a little bit more like, we're just going to focus on the heroes and the bad guys, and we're just going to kind of pew, 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 pew. Like that's what fresh new Star Wars brings to the table is, not only looking at how the people are being impacted by it and like the real human connections, and like this kid lost his father and that radicalized him to become a terrorist, kind of like he built a bomb. And it was obvious to me from the scene. I was like, oh, he making a bomb. That's what he's doing. Mm-hmm. But then also, yeah, like, how does this erode the people who are meant to employ the system? Like the damage that Dedra is experiencing, where it's like she used to be in enforcement, but I guess she was just like, she had a desk job or something, because being confronted with like a riot shakes her in a way that I don't know that anything ever has shaken her before. And so it's just interesting getting to see all these dynamics play out and how it's corrosive to everyone, including the people who are going to be on the front lines of enforcement.
Yeah, we see like I think that like what you highlighted something like really on point, which is you brought up Nemec saying like, oh, the need for control, this like structure is unnatural, and we see that like in a very psychological and like and again intimate way with Deidre. We see her as a control freak who completely loses her mind the moment that something predictably goes out of control. Like she is so, and it's a recurring theme through this, the like arrogance of the Empire in this like, no, like how dare you not do exactly what I tell you when I put incredibly ridiculous demands on you. Oh, a hero of your community died. We're only going to let 40 people come out. We're going to set you up for failure. And you don't know who we are and you're not going to obey that. What the hell? You're going to get mad about that? Yeah. It's like, you know, we see that it's like, it's so interesting. The like episode of her tormenting Bix and the way that she takes like such pleasure. It's so sexual and she's like literally holding her face and all of that. And then we see her like, oh my God, everything is not going according to my plans. Like she is a control freak and she is like an aspect of the psychology of the Empire at play that we see.
Yeah. I mean, I just like that we're getting into more different aspects of this as well. Oh, and this is totally, it's only a little minor comment, but speaking to the arrogance point, the scenes where there's the two spies talking to each other, the ISB guy and Cinta, and like he can't even fathom that the person he's talking to isn't just like a shitty menial laborer. She's like, I know who you are. I'm watching you. And he's like oblivious completely. Yeah. And then she stabs him to death, which is great. I love Cinta.
I gotta point out though that she did not stab him to death enough. Like in terms of like cinema, I understand they usually just do like one or two stabs, but like in self-defense using a knife, they tell you to keep stabbing until you lost count, because a single stab is not going to stop someone. It might kill them, but not immediately.
Not quickly enough.
Yeah. So yeah, they tell you that if you are in a self-defense situation, you are fighting for your life, stab until your arm goes numb and you lost count.
Good to know. That's a little fun fact for everybody. And like, this isn't really relevant to like a broader political point, but I just want to bring attention to the human element of like Vel and Cinta's relationship. First of all, Vel, girl, you're not, what is OPSEC? Vel doesn't believe in OPSEC. Just anyway. But like Cinta is so focused on her mission and she really truly does believe what she says about like, our relationship is secondary to me. Like, I love you and I care for you, but like, this is about the fight for me. And Vel repeats her words, but she doesn't really believe in that, because what she needs from Cinta, what she's waiting for, what she's asking for, please connect with me on a human level. I need connection. Please come away from the window.
Yeah.
And like, we don't really see them be physically intimate, but there is so much raw intimacy to that like need for connection that I love.
I really like that their relationship is like presented the way it is, because it's like the show has no judgment on like both of their different needs. It is kind of like tragic in that way. It's just a tragic presentation of like, they're like star-crossed lovers in like a weird way that you wouldn't expect. I guess it's like, okay, yeah, they're like, they clearly love each other, but there's problems that like are hard to resolve. And it's like, you can completely sympathize with both sides without either side like necessarily having like the moral one up. It is like, it is destructive and horrible to, as we see multiple characters destroy their psyche and their ability to live like an okay life. The one life they're going to live like is tied up in this, struggle. So it's like, you can understand Vel's perspective of being like, I only have like so much time and so much energy to give to like devoting my life to being in opposition to the Empire. And then you can also see Cinta's position being like, I will never be happy if I don't like do everything I can to stop this. I really love that aspect of this show, like how many different perspectives and types of rebel that we see. We see so many different types in this show. Arguably, that's like the core, the most basic theme of the show is like, what do different revolutionary rebels look like? We see, the Mon Mothma type, who is a giant political game of constant two-facing and duplicity and basically a spy story, Then we see Cassian, who's like, a dirty guy just trying to make ends meet, who has kind of a good heart, but he doesn't really know. He's just kind of like trying to avoid getting in trouble and find his sisters. We see all these different types of rebels, and the show is like, yeah, check this out. There are many types. There are so many. There are so many that many people don't even know that they're a part of the struggle, to borrow from directly from Nemec. It's I love that they put that, like, the Nemec's manifesto in there. It is so good. It is.
I hope we hear more of it next season.
Yeah,
I know. I want more of it. Publish
Because
it
Cassian's
in a
got
book,
it.
and I will buy it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, even if we don't, though, like, I feel like it serves such a great purpose in the show, and it is like, it comes late. This whole time Cassian, like, has been holding on to it, and presumably not, like, really able to listen to it because it was hidden in his little junkyard ship. And this whole time he kind of like gets there and goes, oh my God, this guy's been right the whole time from the very beginning. I did do all of the things that he's talking about here, and here I am. This is why I have to be a rebel, because, like, he got me. Like, Nemec got you. He figured you out. Like, he didn't even know he was figuring you out because he was just writing his own thing, but it's cool.
I don't even know. The way that the episode ends, like, I don't think Andor I don't think that his mind was like, yes, I need to be a rebel. I think that he was like, I'm going to die now because the people that I love will never be safe so long as the Empire is looking for me. Of course, he doesn't realize that now they're going to be looking for those people forever anyway, regardless of whether they catch Andor. Now they have a problem with Bix and Brasso and the kid. Like, that's never going to stop. But regardless, he thinks the solution to the problem is, I'm going to go let Luthen shoot me. And then, of course, for Luthen, he's like, perfect. A man with nothing to lose. I am going to recruit him now. Like, that's clearly where we're left at the end of the episode.
I
I
disagree.
have a different read of that.
No?
Yeah,
Okay.
I disagree because there is the bit when Cassian gets Bix to the ship, and Bix is like, Cassian will find us, and he's like, I will find you. And,
I think that's called lying.
well, not to gaze into the future, but the trailer for season 2 is already out, and actually by the time this comes out, the first arc of season 2 should be on Disney Plus.
How
Yeah.
exciting.
But we see Bix and Brasso in season 2. It looks like they're engaged in the fight. Looks like they are rebel scum. So I don't know. I kind of feel like he's gonna connect back with them. I'm
I'm sure he will, but I just don't know that was his intention in the moment. Like,
sure. Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
The way that I read it is, I guess the way that I look at that scene is, it's him being like, okay, yeah, this is a termination point for my current way of living, but he has the advantage over Luthen, and his line that he says is like, kill me or take me in. And then Luthen kind of has this weird look on his face because he's like, he's been one-upped. He also just witnessed a, like, spontaneous revolution occur.
Mm-hmm.
And then he kind of has this moment. I think it's more like he goes, I just watched a rebel get born, and, like, all I really did was have one push at the beginning. I was doing this one heist, and completely independent of me, besides that one one area where I interfaced, I've witnessed a rebel be born. I never interpreted him as, like, seeing this as like, oh, there's a guy with no one to lose. It's him making the decision to not. It mirrors his decision from the beginning of the show where Luthen says, oh, like, I wasn't careful. I took this risk. And then, what's her name?
Val.
No, the other person.
Clea.
Clea.
Yeah.
It's like Leia, but with a K at the beginning. I was very confused.
It's Clea, and then there's also a Star Wars character named Kreia from Old Republic. Whatever. Clea is like, she's like, there's always risks. There's this conversation between them of, like, where's their line? And Luthen's struggle is always like, how much humanity does he have to sacrifice? So I see this moment as him going, wow, I really misread this. And, like, I made the right call back then. This decision that he like regretted to take a risk on someone that he had a gut feeling about, that he was like, this person can help us and we can make a win. Like, I'm not explaining myself perfectly well. I see Luthen's character and his arc through the show as constantly struggling to figure out how much of each like persona that he maintains to like lean into. Like, does he continue fighting in the shadows or do they go loud? And at the end, it's him realizing, I made the right call in going loud. This guy I did not need to kill this guy as if we were still fighting the spy battle that I've been fighting for 15 years. No, this guy is key. He, like, him and the people connected to him just started a spontaneous revolution and blew up a bunch of Imperials. I like that moment of him saying, then take me in, is him going, I just figured out we are going loud. This is the way forward. I can't keep fighting this super clandestine war anymore. That's the way that I read it, I guess.
As Dedra said back in episode 7, it was an announcement.
Yeah.
They didn't know, though. They didn't even know it was an announcement. Yep. And then it's just like, oh, well, I guess we're fucking going now.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that's just like such a roller coaster of a day for Luthen. You know, he's been thinking, he's been stressing for weeks or months, I guess, because Cassian was in prison for a couple months, or at least 1 month. But they were like,
a couple months.
Yeah. So he's like, I've been spending months sweating, wondering where this guy is. And then like he starts his day going to Ferrix, like we're gonna pop a cap in Cassian and I'm gonna protect myself. And then like all this craziness happens. And then Cass gets the jump on him and he's like, oh shit, I might be about to die. And then Cassian kind of submits himself. And then there's like this whole like, oh, I can use you. Like, I don't like the whole new relationship has just opened up in its possibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see that moment as like, I think one thing we can definitely agree on is like, it is an end for Cassian. The way I see it though, is that it's him acknowledging that the end of his former life it's like his former life has come to an end. He is like, you know, Ferrix is gone. My tie to this place is gone. I have to become something new. Whether that's a dead guy by means of, you know, doing that. I just don't think that my personal thing is, I don't think Cassian was suicidal. I think that he was hoping that this guy would let him become a rebel. Take me into your movement. You know, I've seen the truth now.
Yeah, I think. Well, and we'll get into Rogue One. I'm sure after Andor season 2, I think we want to go rewatch Rogue One.
I would love to rewatch Rogue. I would watch Rogue One, you know, in between, but I mean, it might be better to wait. But
I feel like save it for the end because, like, we're so close to season 2 anyway. It's just natural to cap off Andor's story. But like the moment in Rogue One where why am I forgetting the main character's name? Jyn Erso. Yeah. Where she has a real turnaround and is like has stopped being this kind of like passive person who and starts actively arguing for things, is when she sees the destructive power of the Death Star and she's like, no, we've got to fucking stop this. That's when she's inspired. And I think for Cassian, because Cassian was not looking to be a rebel, he was looking to make his own, you know, little pile and live off somewhere away from the Empire's influence. But here he sees what his mother inspired and is like, I think I want a taste of that. I think I've got something to live for besides living itself.
Something that I find, you know, that I could plug into. There's a leftist political philosopher writer named Deleuze and Guattari. They're two people, actually. I shouldn't have said one, but Deleuze and Guattari, I have a lot of contact with them via a partner of mine who is, I should say, like an amateur scholar. I'll put it that way. But Deleuze and Guattari, one of the things that they talk about in their work a lot are concepts of lines of flight. And they talk about this in connection to the state. These lines of flight being like a thing that occurs as a necessity in response to the formation of like state entities and entities of dominance, that like these entities, like an empire, they interrupt life in such a way that many people naturally find lines of flight. And there are many different like forms of lines of flight that can occur, you know? And I find it interesting that like this show, like, I don't know if they, I assume Tony Gilroy is probably very well read, but his depiction of literal lines of flight, like people like Andor who are like, I need to get to another planet and just find a different life, come with me, mom, let's go, let's find a different life, to the types of people who are like, I fly into a fake identity, or I fly into all these different lines of flight that are responses to like, trying to escape and build a life that is not dominated by this like giant entity. I find it an interesting, there are ties between these concepts. Like you brought up, like, Andor wanting to run away, and like that is a valid response to a enormous entity trying to crush down on you. But it's also a valid response to go, we make a line of flight by means of fighting back and like taking space. So it's this whole show is in discussion like that. I would find it interesting to see like a Delusian read of Andor. I feel like there's a lot. So
That would be interesting. I'm so interested in, it's like politics, but it's philosophy, like at the end of the day. And I just do want to say something before I forget it. It's a good thing that Marva didn't leave with Cass, because she would have just died alone somewhere.
yeah.
That would have been a problem.
And it wouldn't have
Yeah.
inspired a massive uprising on Ferrix.
Yeah, like she would have died under an obscure pseudonym somewhere.
I mean, it makes sense like where Andor was coming from, but in the end, it's like, she wanted to make the calls about her own end of life. And like, that's important. It's important to
And she did.
respect somebody. Yeah. And she did.
Like,
she did very much so.
Put on her Sunday best to
Mhm.
record herself saying her last words. Brasso, I think it's implied that Brasso was there for her last moments, or at least for her last words, like whatever.
Brasso was definitely there, at least close to the end. He had like final words to give Cassian
Cass.
from Marva, which,
Yeah.
like, man, this finale had like 3 awesome speeches, and 2 of them
Yeah.
were from Marva. And I kind of the last words that Brasso passed on from Marva to Cassian were short, but like I kind of feel they're the most like emotionally impactful, because it's tell him he knows everything he needs to know and feels everything he needs to feel, and when the day comes and those two pull together, he will be an unstoppable force for good. Like that right there, that is so cool. I love that. And of course there's I love him more than anything he could ever do wrong. That's like, yeah. I can see it in your face. You can't see my face, but I'm there too.
I adopted my younger sibling very recently, like in the last couple of years. So that to me is like, yeah, the sudden love that you feel for this person who did not come from your body, and like the responsibility that you feel, and like all of that goes into it. Like, yeah, it's huge. And I think that, and also for those of us who are seeking a mother figure kind of, or seeking an inspiration figure, like her words to Cass also speak directly to us, and like that we are feeling exactly what we need to feel, and that we can be a major force for good, is like, that's just what you need to hear right now when everything sucks all the time. I know that like we in this call are like taking psychic damage from just kind of existing in a fascist state right now.
Yeah.
And it's hard, and you need that message sometimes of just like, you're doing exactly what you need to do.
For posterity, to those who may listen to this in the distant future, yes, it is indeed a fascist uprising. And as of this very moment, we are witnessing a deliberate destruction of the world economy in the name of culture war, dictator, aspirational. It is very imperial. And
I think people are calling today Orange Monday. I've seen that one.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
So.
Yeah.
Oh man, I wasn't listening to the news earlier.
Again, for posterity, last week was there was a day called by the current president, quote unquote, Liberation Day, in which a enormous swath of decisions were made that will, of all people, damage the poorest in the world the most. And this was called Liberation Day. And now, since then, the country's economy, the world economy, has collapsed for absolutely no reason other than, a power grab. So just so for people who might be listening to this in the future, you understand what we're referencing. in this current moment and why this show feels so goddamn relevant.
Yeah. I guess for context, like, because these are also coming out much later than we record them. Like, this past week was the week that the stocks went like this, pew, straight down.
The Dow has been, the 5-day average of the Dow is down 3,000 points. So just,
yeah, it's ridiculous. And on top of that, it's like this occurs after months of mass overnight firings of federal employees. So huge surge in people just losing their jobs. There is a current ongoing attack on basically every social security net that currently exists in our society. And now the market is crashing, which will inevitably lead to massive job losses. It's a rough time. And that's why, and all of this, of course, is quite literally just for one guy's power. It is shocking to behold.
people were literally posting the opening crawl to the Phantom Menace because it's shockingly
the trade
relevant.
war.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. The Nintendo.
George Lucas knew the whole time. He's just not a very good writer.
Yeah. This week was the week of the Nintendo Switch. That's what happened this week.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The Nintendo Switch. Oh my God.
I will say that, like, I have hope that the Switch 2 pricing is going to radicalize some gamers away from the fascist side.
Yeah,
like,
maybe.
Gamergate had their time, and now we will have ours.
Yeah, I've seen so many memes that are like, oh, I want my games to not be political, and then like a few more frames as the prices come up, and then the face changes and it gets more intense. Like, I'm now awake.
Yeah, the thing is, and people talk about the silent majority and these kind of concepts. Gaming has like the biggest silent majority you can possibly imagine. The hyper anti-woke gamers are like a minor horde in comparison to like a matter of objective fact, like against the amount of people who play video games, the number of people that are like, no politics in video games, they're just nothing. They're like a little clump of ants. There is a very real possibility that this type of stuff awakens a sleeping giant in that regard of people who are going to go, wait a second, the Switch 2 is going to cost me $850 now, and the games are going to be over $100. What the hell? No Mario? But but nah, it's a weird and rough and strange time. Oh yeah, I wanted to say one thing in defense of the prequels.
Okay.
Because I don't even think you have to qualify the fact that George Lucas was channeling something like politically accurate in all of that. I think the politics of the prequels is the most coherent and best written part of the entire prequels, to the point that I feel like that's what he was thinking about the most, and just like was like, oh, I gotta write in lasers and fights and a lot of they fight.
The entire second movie on this stupid fucking romance.
Yeah, like everything else feels like it just wasn't, his heart wasn't as much in it, because the politics of like the way that it's written, of like using like neoliberal trade war struggles to be manipulated into imperial power grabs is just so accurate to American politics over the last few decades. Like not just, I mean, he was obviously like this sort of like Bush era politics was like very much present in the prequels and in the conversations around the prequels.
Literally quotes George Bush, like
yeah, but it's like, but it carries forward to like, oh, we see now like the acceleration of that. Like, we now see like what it looks like when somebody with purely imperial intent. And again, right now, the president is talking about how he wants to find a way to take power again after his second term. There is massive, aggressive, we'll say, quote unquote, reform of voting laws that are deliberately meant to bend the laws in favor of a particular party. And on top of that, there is regular, and I'm talking multiple times per week, discussion of invading two of our allies in the name of claiming their lands. We are living in an imperial stage.
And the Jedi won't tell you this, but their power to use the Force has diminished.
Their power to use the Force has greatly diminished. And there's no like, whoa, Earth Rider and Battle Fellas and hubba. Like, that should have been the Yoda moment of everyone going, "Oh my God, this guy talking about Earth Riders and Havudababa and Battle Fellas. We got to be careful. We should have been more awake.
Should have been more woke.
I do want to touch on Mon Mothma just as like of the storylines, we just want to touch on it really briefly. Because I felt bad for her before. I was like, wow, she is alone in this world. I feel bad for her. But that's her cover. Like, she started a fight with her husband when she knew that he didn't do anything wrong, because she knew that a spy was listening to her and would report, so that she would have cover for the money that she's funneling into Luthen's pockets, basically. Like,
not that I feel bad for Perrin, but
no, I don't feel bad for Perrin. To be clear, I don't like Perrin. I don't like Lita. They both suck. But like, at least I completely understand like with the situation she's put herself in. She's done that deliberately. And also, like, I guess a little sigh of relief that her daughter wants to do the thing that she's going to trade her for financial protection. At least she wants to do that. So you don't have to deal with like her being pissed off for that.
But her daughter's also 13. She doesn't fucking know. Like,
of course she doesn't know what she's getting into. No, but at least she can feel less like, oh, I'm forcing my daughter to do something. Yeah. When she's choosing to do it, regardless of what's going on in the mind of a 13-year-old.
That, like, because when Vel comes in and sees that she's in having the youth group. Mm-hmm. and it's just like, was this Perrin's idea? And Mon's like, no, Perrin's surprisingly open-minded on the top of it. This is her. And, that actually kind of, when I was a teenager and raised in an evangelical household, like, I would get, there was a youth group that I got involved with where we were actually more religiously extreme than what my parents were advocating for. And my mom just like, I looking back on memories of things that my mom had told me, I was like, oh, she was trying to get me out of there. Like, not telling me I can't go there, but like trying to subtly push me to be like, hey, things aren't right there. You should think about what's going on. And
movements like that target impressionable kids.
Totally.
Yeah, and like, I think that Mon Mothma knows that and is kind of like, I am really in a pinch and I have to choose between like an ongoing fight with my kid who's going to get, further radicalized into this horrible like conservative worldview with like child marriages and shit, or whether I say, well, this will allow me to try and change the world for the better so that someday maybe she can get out. It's horrible. It is like, Mon Mothma's position is like agonizing to witness.
Yeah, because she's not just sacrificing herself at that point. To her mind, she is sacrificing her daughter's future.
Yes. Yeah.
For the cause.
Yeah, and it makes sense why, like, I don't know, I guess Tony Gilroy successfully sells me on why she ends up becoming a general in the rebellion. Mm-hmm. You're like, oh yeah, like, talk about someone with a true scar to get back for, like, I have been so hurt by this. I will not rest until this is over. It really checks out.
That message of sacrifice. I guess, like, I just checked in my notes. Like, I had two different interpretations of what Luthen's mindset was like at the end. It's like, either this is a man with nothing to lose who's willing to give to the cause, or this is a man who is willing to sacrifice everything, potentially including like all these relationships and everything. Like, this man who has lost so much, and now he's come to me to say, like, I'm going to join the cause or whatever. Because I think that just speaks to that theme that we're seeing crop up. Like, rebellion is a strong theme here, and sacrifice, and how sacrifice is inherently tied to heroism, are kind of like the things that go in. So Mothma is a hero because she's sacrificed basically everything. She's sacrificed like a good family life. She is suffering in her career. She does not seem to have many friends. And I just think that that's admirable in a way.
Yeah, I think the show takes care to like show the like that it is a very difficult line to find between making a sacrifice for a greater good and hurting people. That this is a very difficult line to tread, and that the characters have to put an incredible amount of thought and personal pain into it, that there's no easy way through. Like, you have an empire that's willing to like utilize people for anything, and like, put next to Mon Mothma, it's like, okay, is she using her family? Like Perrin and Leda? Yeah, she is. And it resembles in some ways the way that the Empire uses people. And, you know, Luthen even says, I use the tools of my enemy to defeat them, or the tactics of my enemy to defeat them. And it's like, yeah, like this show is very interested in highlighting that and going, this is difficult. Like, you don't always have a clean choice. And sometimes like you're going to make decisions that have repercussions that you didn't intend. And like, are you willing to like deal with those and grapple with them morally? A great example of this that's like a different character is like Cassian and Bix. Like, he never meant for any of that to happen, but as a result of him trying to like find his own, like, you know, to touch back his own line of flight away from the Empire, just like she ends up getting tortured, and they have to sort that out and find a way through that. Of course, he makes the decision, I'm going to like go way out of my way to make sure that you're rescued. He doesn't like abandon her, but like Pac dies. Yeah, dude got executed. And the simple truth is that like there's that line from Saw, let's call it war. You know, or I call it war, I think is what he says. But
he said, let's call it war. Because for the greater good, call it what you want. Let's call it war. Let's call it war, which is like, there you have it. It's like they, you know, the conclusion is like, yeah, we have this entity that is controlling us. We are put into positions. We have to go to war, and it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a constant struggle of trying to figure out if we were doing the right thing or if we didn't. And sometimes we might not do the right thing.
And we will lose things, and we will lose people. And sometimes those sacrifices are necessary.
Rip Anto Krieger.
Yeah. Well, no, you know, like I don't really like what we got, like a holographic image of him, and that was it.
Like not even a real human being. That was a character from a video game.
It is funny where I was like, in that scene with Bix, it's like, is this the man who like recruited you or whatever? And I'm just like, please, Bix, just burn
just
it.
Just say yes.
Burn it. I'm like,
just say it was him.
That guy definitely has like a whole crew of guys, and I bet if we got a story about Anto Krieger, I'd be like, no, Anto Krieger.
But they wouldn't have killed all of them if she had said that was the guy. Like,
also, if she had said it was him and then they didn't get any further information from her, like maybe if she said it was him, that they would have killed her afterwards.
That's true too.
They weren't going to leave her alive after they tortured her for information. They were going to kill her.
They wanted to use her as a witness, but yeah.
So,
but then she got
rescued, need a witness?
So.
Are they doing trials here? They're just going to go and kill these people.
Well, they needed her to identify Axis. Sure. So if she identifies Krieger as Axis, then you're correct. They do not need her anymore.
Yeah.
I expect that at the beginning of next season, we're going to have like the Daedra storyline is probably going to be her realizing, oh, okay, we got Anto Krieger with this whole thing, and he's totally not the guy. Like,
well, she was protesting that they didn't leave any survivors, like because she was off on Ferrix when it happened, and they're like, oh, she's already on the horn yelling at us for not when like
she's
her
like
boss
telling
is just
her boss like, you should have asked me first.
Well, like, he's like, this wasn't about intel, this was about wiping the taste of Aldani from the Emperor's mouth. It's like, oh great, so the Emperor is just as petulant and like short-sighted as ever. Like, come on, are you kidding me? Like,
really reminds you of a certain person.
Crazy.
Sitting here on Orange Monday.
Anyway, any final thoughts from anyone here?
No, I think we touched on basically everything that I wanted to talk about. I think this has been just a wonderful watch and wonderful conversation. And
yes, I've enjoyed it. I feel good in a way that I wouldn't have felt good before this show. Like, I just reiterating again that the show, because it's sometimes when I watch Star Wars, I get kind of emotionally upset because I'm like, they're replaying the futility of the fight. Like, oh, we got to go this place. Well, shit, our plan got foiled. And like, so many people died in order to, like, you know, Rogue One, like everybody dies at the end, basically. So it feels good to have this show kind of helping sort of counteract that pessimism to show that, you know, the relationships themselves are worth fighting for, that like you living your own life is worth fighting for. And that, you know, this is a situation that we've been placed in and we are not necessarily responsible for that because there are so many forces working outside of you. like stranger than fiction. Like the plot is coming for you. It's not just like you're driving the plot forward. It's going to come for you even if you're just sitting on your couch, but that you can respond in an intelligent way and by forging connections with people. And so to me, that feels like aspirational and hopeful. And I'm encouraging people to watch it because it's making me feel that way.
I agree. Yeah.
I'm glad that we did this at this point in time specifically.
Me too.
For my own, like, personal edification and mental well-being. I think this was a good time to watch.
Yeah. Also, I want to say, to build off of what you were saying, Moss, I think the show also says that, like, even if you don't do it perfectly, it's okay. No one can.
Try.
And try. Yeah. Like, what matters is, like, as you see visually through the show in Ferrex, you see a bunch of imperfect people come together, and with only doing their part as best as they can, the action together creates a spontaneous revolution. And that's the thing to take away, is that these things evolve, that they evolve together in ways we can't always perceive, and that what matters is that we do our best.
All right. Well, that wraps up the first season of Andor. We will return once the second season has finished coming out.
So excited.
But for next season of the podcast, we will be going into the original series Star Trek movies. There's 6 of them, and that should be fun. We're going from the Star Trek to the Star Wars, which feels appropriate because Star Trek as a film franchise only exists because of Star Wars. They were going to do a sequel series, and then Star Wars came out, and they're like, hey, let's make a movie instead. So that's what we'll be watching next. Look forward to that. Thank you all so much for joining. I've been Gayfesh.
I'm Moss.
And I'm DemonMama.
And until next time, fuck the Empire.
True.
Fuck the Empire. And fucking fight them too.
Bye.
Bye.